members on call, allow me to welcome the committee members on call. Thank you very much for sparing your evening to be with us. Then allow me to also welcome the speaker and the moderator. Thank you very much for sparing time for this knowledge sharing session. And also allow me to welcome all the members on call. Thank you for continuously seeking wisdom and knowledge. We are grateful that you've made time for this call. Before we begin, allow me to request Ms. Rita Kobsinje to give us an opening prayer, and then we can get the ball rolling. Ms. Rita Kobsinje, please take it away from there.
Shall we pray? Father God, we thank you for this evening. We ask you to come and bless our meeting. We ask you to bless our speaker, our moderator, and all the attendees. That we pray that by the time we finish this webinar, we will have achieved the cause and the intention and the objective, and we'll go back different. We ask you to come and be with us, instill in us all that we need to have and all that we need to be. In Jesus' mighty name, we pray with thanksgiving. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Ms. Rita Kobsinje, for that prayer. Members on call, please allow me to remind you about our questionnaire. After the webinar, there is a questionnaire that runs immediately after the webinar, and this is to help us improve and to pick up your suggestions for the topics for discussion, and also for selecting the speakers that you'd want to hear from. So please, members, pay about 1 minute after the to respond to that question. It is very good feedback for us and for improvement. I'll go next to the profile of the moderator for the day. Ms. Rita, can you please display the profile? Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you very much for that. This. Okay, thank you very much. So our moderator for the day is by the name Mrs. Barbara Wabwire. Barbara is an accomplished professional with extensive experience in systems auditing, forensic investigations in the financial, media, and publishing industries. She currently reviews IT infrastructure agility, assesses security and information assets, conducts system-related investigations, and evaluates overall IT agility. She also advises on the overall alignment of IT to the business strategy and reviews overall compliance with regulatory, legal, and industry standards. She has over 13 years of experience in consultancy in the areas of IT governance, project management, and process optimization, strategic planning and implementation, cyber and information security, change management, risk management and assurance, as well as research in the financial, media and publishing, telecom, and academia. Mrs. Barbara is a CISA, Certified Information Systems Auditor, holds an MBA from Edinburgh Business School in the UK, Bachelor of IT from Makerere University. She has to her name various other certifications in data analytics, monitoring and evaluation, and cybersecurity, among others. In her free time, Mrs. Barbara volunteers with She Leads Tech and in other various capacities at the Kampala chapter, and she also enjoys working with nature and writing. Some of her articles have been published by ISACA. Barbara is also a wife and mother gifted with two lovely children and a son, and three great German shepherds, whom she dotes on. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the profile for Mrs. Barbara Wabwile. Allow me to hand over to the moderator to take us to the next session. Thank you very much.
Okay, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. It's good evening from Kampala. Thank you so much, John, for the introduction. Thank you for setting the pace. A kind reminder, our topic for discussion in the webinar today is securing an AI ecosystem, the next big cybersecurity challenge. My role today is to introduce the keynote speaker. I am honored to introduce to you a gentleman that you all know very well. He is one of the best, if not the very best that we have in our local chapter. I am honored to introduce him. Our keynote speaker, Mr. Rodney Adrico, Rodin Hood Adrico. We are more used to Rodney. Rodney is a PhD researcher affiliated with the Institute of Cybersecurity for Society, ICSS, at the University of Kent in the United Kingdom. He possesses a wealth of knowledge and expertise in the fields of technology, blockchain, cybersecurity, and privacy. Rodney has accumulated over 8 years of invaluable experience in both academics, risk consulting, and industrial setting. For his master's research on cybersecurity, Rodney was awarded the UK Chartered Institute of Information Security, CISEC, which is CIISEC, Student Project of the Year Award 2022, and nominated for the inaugural Fred Piper Awards. Ladies and gentlemen, in our midst, we are having a person who is very informed and ready to share with us a wealth of experiences. As we get him ready to take over, I'll just remind you a few things that John talked about. We have the features of the chat and the Q&A, which we are going to be using for sharing questions and observations. Kindly post your questions and observations in the chat or use the Q&A session that will be attended to at the end. And like John said, at the end of the webinar, remember to complete the survey because it helps us to shine and we shine together. So ladies and gentlemen, allow me to hand over to our keynote speaker, Mr. Rodney Adrico. The floor is yours. You are very welcome.
Thank you so much, Barbara, for the kind introduction, and thank you, everyone that has gotten us to this point thus far. And again, it's good that we are starting these sessions with prayer these days, which is quite good. And I'd like to commend the new leadership on that. So the aspect of involving the Almighty in whatever we do is quite important, and it's good that it's something that we are carrying on. From me, not much to say. I believe the intro is sufficient. And good evening, everyone, and thank you for making time for this. We just want to have a brief talk, a brief conversation on a topic of interest, whether it is for us, whether it is for everyone, really, whether it's, again, from a cybersecurity perspective, whether it is from a political perspective, a social perspective, because these days when we talk about cyber, we look at aspects pertaining what we call interdisciplinary cybersecurity, where we're not necessarily looking at aspects that pertain to only security from a technology perspective, but look at how it impacts overall society and how it impacts aspects, again, regarding the political space, aspects regarding academia, but also over and above aspects pertaining technology. Otherwise, thank you, and I do hope that we get ourselves immersed in this conversation, and we are able to make some good use of the time that we have here and be able to share. I'll try to keep my presentation so brief so that we do have comments, and glad and be able to hear from everyone and be able to receive feedback in terms of questions that we can respond to. Otherwise, let's just get this started. And usually my usual disclaimer when I'm starting these presentations is that whatever views and opinions that I make during these presentations are mine and mine alone. They are my personal opinion based on my own experiences and don't necessarily reflect the views of my employer, Centenary Bank, where I still work as manager audit, but also do not reflect the views of my research lab, the Institute of Cybersecurity for Society, and again, do not reflect necessarily the views of His Majesty the King's government as well. Otherwise, thank you, and I hope that we get ourselves involved into this. But again, by and large, we're speaking about how we are securing an AI ecosystem. Again, from a cybersecurity perspective, would ideally prefer that we speak to it from a larger picture or a broader picture perspective, where we try to understand how this ties into cyber, how this again eventually also ties into society. So I've just highlighted a few things here. They're really very high level, and I don't expect to dwell so much on the slides. Usually, I'll speak much of the time from the head, and the slides are just probably guiding aspects of it. But one, I just want us to cover up again what is artificial intelligence, and then again, being the society that we're in, trying to couple that up with cyber. And then there's an aspect I've called fearing the unknown, where we shall discuss general societal perception around aspects pertaining to AI and again machine learning in general, just for us to be able to get the other, as I said, the interdisciplinary aspects of it for us to be able to hear. As I was preparing for this presentation, it is interesting that there was another webinar on a seeming related topic, and it was presented by a gentleman called Steve Piper, who's the CEO of CyberEdge Security Solution, and I thought he delivered a very good presentation. So I've tried to incorporate some of the things that some of the points that he made into this presentation. And again, for purposes of this, I didn't have so much time to make the presentation. And I'll show you at the end of the meeting, I requested Google Bard AI, which is Google's competitor to ChatGPT, to try to create for me a presentation, which it did. And part of the content here is not necessarily authored by myself. Some of it is authored by Google Bard with some few modifications that I made, and also I've attempted to incorporate in some aspects from the presentation by Steve Piper. So basically, in terms of the understanding of AI, for us really to know what is this AI and what is it about. But at the end of the day, it's just the two words. We were speaking about intelligence to begin with, but then we are also speaking about artificial. Artificial meaning something that's not necessarily you could say natural, which is the direct opposite of that. It's something that is more or less that is created over time, something that is engineered, and that's basically what it means. So AI, very briefly, is just a set of technologies that allow computers to perform a variety of advanced functions, including the ability to see, ability to understand, ability to translate spoken and written language, ability to analyze data, ability to make recommendations, quite a number of things. And of course, it's really a broad aspect that that you can look at, so that it's not something that is coined in only this, but there's the ability to see, it has the ability to understand, it has the ability to translate spoken and written language. When we talk about aspects pertaining to natural language processing, when we talk of aspects in terms of being able to understand and translate written language, we speak of aspects of chatbot, and we shall have a very brief chat on that. That's for us sort of try to understand where we've come from with this AI thing, and how then it eventually fits into the entire frame of society and the entire frame of cybersecurity as a whole. In other words, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get machines to a point where they can perform tasks, some of them repetitive, others non-repetitive, but those tasks, they should be able to perform those tasks without having humans supervising them to be able to perform those tasks. And basically, in the general picture of it, that is really what artificial intelligence does. And we're just trying to make the discussion at times, if we make it complex, maybe hard for the non-techie group to understand, but I've tried to make it as much as possible for everyone to really understand and have a better and an easy understanding of that. So again, when we talked of aspects pertaining to whether it is natural language processing, aspects pertaining to translating written speech, aspects pertaining to translating spoken text, the things that come into mind, if you look at aspects, what we talk about chatbots and what we call generative AI. Generative AI, basically, it is again AI where we can create a variety of data objects. It can be an image, it can be a video, it can be a 3D model, it can be a text. But this is done after this particular model, this particular AI software has discovered some learning patterns from existing data, and then uses that knowledge to be able to generate some new and some unique outputs. Again, generative AI has been around for some time. Of course, it has been introduced because if you look at the aspect of generative AI, you could say it's been around from about the 1960s, where we still had chatbots. But of course, they've gained so much awareness during the recent decade. If you look at around 2014, where we introduced what we call generative adversarial networks. And those networks are really things that they can create a number of things. They can create things that for example, what we call deepfake images, deepfake video, deepfake audio. But we shall be able to discuss some of those in the next sessions of the presentation. But ideally, that is it. So again, further awareness was gained in 2018 when we had the first version of ChatGPT. Of course, we've just known ChatGPT now, but the initial version of ChatGPT was available from 2018. That's when probably it gained further awareness. But now we've gotten so much awareness of it now, in that we even have quite a number of vendors that are beginning to, security vendors in particular, that are beginning to implement some of this generative AI into their solutions to do quite a number of things from a cyber perspective, to do things in terms of whether it is from a threat management perspective, whether it is from a threat intelligence perspective. So we are seeing a lot of security vendors implementing those AI tools again in their solutions. Of course, the most recent chatbots, again, from that perspective, there's GPT-1, GPT-2, GPT-3. There's ChatGPT, there's ChatGPT, again, there's GPT 3.5, there's Turbo AI, there's GPT-4. Then right now, what is now recent, or what is being available now, is what now we're using as ChatGPT Plus, which is an improved version. So these have been around for some time. But again, over and above these, there are again other modern chatbots. If you look at Bing AI, I don't know those who've used that. It's quite informative. I use it sometimes to do some bits of work. It's there in the Microsoft Edge by default. There's Google Bard AI, which is what I use to create bits and bits of this presentation, which is provided by Google, which is their version of competition to ChatGPT. So quite a number of things. There's Cloud AI, there's Llama, there's Pi, there's Jasper Chat. We shall speak about some of these in the next sessions of the presentation. But ideally, those are really some of the things that we can do much with that. But of course, there were some very, very much earlier chatbots that were there that probably some of us didn't really know of. I was at times when you're looking, reading up on some of these things, it's interesting how much you can discover. I discovered that there was a chatbot called Eliza that was developed in 1966 by Joseph. I think it's called Weze Barnum. He was a professor at MIT. So that's how far back these we are seeing these chatbots now, but the men that were before us, men and women that were before us, that thought of some of these things 1966 there was Eliza, and I think 1972 there was Parry, that was developed, surprising, by a psychiatrist. 1988 there was something called Japawaki, which was also developed by a carpenter. At times we look at some of these things and we think we've just created them, but they've been around for some time. But of course, about 2009, at least we all know WeChat now. 2010 is now most recent. We begin to see Siri. 2012 brings aspects of Google now, which again we should be familiar with. And then 2014, of course, we are familiar with Alexa. I think that at least that we are very familiar with. But we're also familiar with Microsoft's version of that. Alexa is Amazon, but so Microsoft had Cortana in that space, that also a chatbot. So though we see these things now at the tail end, but these things have been done. Have been done before us. Of course, 2015, quite a number. 2015 is when probably OpenAI, which is now running ChatGPT, the one that was founded by Sam Altman and Elon Musk as a non-profit organization. So quite a number. So they were able to do that. So we can see progressively that things have changed over time, and we've been able to advance in our history of this particular generative or this particular chatbots until where we are now in 2023, where we have GPT 3.5, where we have Turbo AI, we have GPT, what we've been discussing, GPT-4 and GPT plus. Again, sticking again with the concept of chatbots, there are quite a number of variations to how chatbots can be implemented. But of course, we look at chatbots that have proprietary LLMs meaning a large language model. So those, of course, those have been around. Those are the ones that really started. Those are the ones that been around for years. They require thousands of parameters. But basically, those are the ones that were used by companies for you could say customer support. Because somehow you go on a website, there's a small chat window where you can type your question, and you're able to receive feedback on that. Those are the chatbots, but they have proprietary large language models that are specific to that particular company or that particular website that's running that service. But then now we begin to see chatbots that are built on state-of-the-art large language models, which are the chatbots that we're seeing now. Chatbots like the Google Bard, chatbots like the chatbots provided by OpenAI, chatbots like Anthropic. Those are built on what we call state-of-the-art large language models. They have quite, of course, the initial chatbots, the ones with proprietary LLMs, that were very limited. They had only about thousands of parameters, but now these have billions of parameters. Then, of course, now we also have chatbots that are built on open source LLMs, which are aspects. Of course, most of them it's open source, been built on GitHub, and you can integrate that with quite a number of things. You can integrate it with BotPress, you can integrate it with the BotKit, you can integrate it with Wit.ai, you can integrate it with Chatterbot. There's something called, I think, Rasa. Then there's Microsoft's bot framework that you can use and can integrate all these things because it is open source and you're able to plug into it directly. So they take quite a number of parameters as well, but that volume and that size of the parameters really varies depending on what you want to achieve, or depending on what you want to build with that particular chatbot. So that's really it for the chatbots. But the message we try to communicate again in this slide is if you just look at the impact that this generative AI has. It took if you put that growth into context, I think you can just look at this graph and it's quite interesting. That Netflix was launched in 1999, and it took Netflix about 3.5 years for it to reach its first 1 million users. So there's Netflix, there's Kickstarter, we're all familiar with Airbnb, we're all familiar with Twitter, which is now X. It took about 2 years to reach 1 million users. Dropbox about 7 months. Spotify about 5 months. Instagram pretty well, about 2.5 months, 2.5 months. But if you look at ChatGPT, just in 2022, it took ChatGPT only 5 days. And only 5 days, what that means is when ChatGPT launched, within 5 days, it had hit 1 million users. And if you look at that growth, and if you look at all the other solutions that have come before that, you look at Instagram, look at Spotify, look at Facebook, look at Dropbox, they were king at the time when they actually came out, but none of them actually took that short a time. But this thing only took 5 days. So within 5 days, we had really a very high number of people there. But right now, ChatGPT has over 100 million users, and that is after what has been released in the public now, after only about a year. In 5 days, it had already surpassed 1 million users. And the website itself, openai.com, gets about 1 billion visits per month. So quite the sources there, and quite interesting reading into these numbers. And 60% of ChatGPT's social media traffic comes via YouTube. So if you look at this, you can clearly see that it is something that is, as probably one could say, running at a very terrific speed. It's something that people are embracing. It could be because it's new to begin with, but it could also be because people really love it and people think it can be able to add value. And just by the numbers alone, you can be able to see that it's something that will have a substantial impact on society, but also something that will have substantial impact on how we do operate as humans from a cyber perspective, but also from a societal perspective. And of course, global spending on AI is really growing. I think by 2026, it's expected to be, or it's expected to exceed about $301 billion. That's quite huge. So clearly, you can say that the technologies that we're dealing with, the aspects that we're dealing in now are really some things that are taking significant, or they're making significant changes in the direction of life, but also making significant changes in the direction of work per se. So it's really a topic that needs to be discussed, and it's a topic that we need to address. And again, it's good that we're discussing this during this time, for us to be able to gain the best out of it. In this slide, I'm just trying to see what are people saying in terms of the big people in tech. Elon Musk says, I'm increasingly inclined to think that there should be some regulatory oversight, maybe at national or international level, just to make sure that we don't do something very foolish. I mean, with AI, we are summoning the demon. Of course, when I was listening, or when I was watching Steve Piper's presentation, he mentioned and he provided an example that I want to share here as well, because when we were moving from 1999 to 2000, there was that sort of talk that the world is going to the world was going to end. Of course, it didn't as well, that we're going to be extinct at the time. That is one. But secondly, there was the idea that since computers have been used to 1990, 18 something, computers are not used to the 2000 fashion. So again, from a tech perspective, there was a working theory that all computers were going to die. The moment we hit 31st December, crossing into 1st of Jan of 2000, there was talk that all computers are going to die, everything is going to go off. And of course, there was fear in society, even from our perspective, from a society perspective as well. There was talk of Nobiru, I think, at some point. And there was that fear, 2000 is coming, we're not ready for it as humans, but also we're not ready for it as computers. But of course, we are here. We've lived our time, and also want to believe and hope that this talk about this AI is something. We have very brilliant people. It's something that these brilliant people can do about it and can be able to really address it. Alan Turing, of course, who is probably who we call probably the father of computing, says the computer would deserve to be called intelligent if it could deceive a human into believing it was human. And I think we're all familiar with the Turing test. Is that if I'm speaking to a computer and I cannot actually detect that I'm speaking to a computer and it feels I'm speaking to a human, that's a computer that we'll call intelligent. So really, a lot of fear, one could say, into that. Again, this graph speaks to this infographic more or less speaks to the same. 45 to 60%, and this is from a 2020 European Consumer Organization survey. 45 to 60% of participants of Europeans agree that AI will lead to more abuse of personal data. This again from a privacy perspective. 60% of consumers express concern about how organizations apply and use AI. Again, we shall speak later on aspects of responsible AI and see how we can achieve that. And then 96% of professionals state that their organizations already have policies in place to meet the responsible and ethical standards of privacy in AI that consumers expect. As from the 2023 Data Privacy Benchmark Survey. Of course, you can see again the mixed feelings. Some are saying to lead to more personal abuse. Security professionals are saying we've already implemented as schemes or processes in place or controls in place to ensure that we're able to manage this risk. But of course, others saying that, this thing is here. We don't know what it is. We are summoning the demon, and quite many other interesting things. But yeah, so basically from a general overview, really that is it in terms of a basic understanding of artificial intelligence, a basic understanding of how we've come from where we started to where we are now, and how that ideally works. Probably one could say in the general frame of AI for us to be able to get that understanding. But now here we just delve deeper. One into how then this AI is integrated into cyber, and quite which good things are there. Of course, there will be some bad things, but then at the end of the day, what is important, again, same as when the internet came, of course, there was a lot of news, there was a lot of vibe around it, but one could say now probably it's something that is okay, or it is something that has created a positive net effect. And we also hope that AI does the same for cyber, but we shall just discuss in the following sections how that integrates. So cyber attacks, again, are becoming increasingly sophisticated, and they're becoming increasingly costly. Because the impacts of the breach are now far more reaching. Again, for the basic reason that if you look at that, COVID changed a lot again in terms of how businesses operate, in terms of how society operates. Many of the guys that had never thought that at one point they would be online are now online. Many of the guys that had never thought they would be able to order things online are now ordering online. If you look at aspects again for some of our parents, if you told a guy that, man, you can order this thing online and you can get it, he will say, what I say. But in COVID, again, people probably realize that actually I can order the thing and someone can deliver. And because those are the guys that were termed as essential workers. So it's really, the attacks have become more increasingly sophisticated due to a number of things. Technology has also evolved. Also, when technology evolves, and the attack methods also evolve, and the hackers or the malicious attackers also get more knowledge. So traditional security methods are no longer or are not always effective against new threats. Of course, it's one of the things we already discussed when talking about signature-based, that is malware detection, because that does not work if it's a zero-day vulnerability. It has never been seen before anyway. So where would our security vendor gotten knowledge of that? So our traditional security methods are not always effective against new threats. So we have to keep evolving. But the good thing is now that we have AI, we are trying to use AI to be able to improve cybersecurity in quite a number of ways. Of course, if you look at there's some statistics that are trying to make the point that after if you look at the data between 2020, as 2020, 2021, 22, and 23, there's probably been a decline in the number of organizations that have suffered, one could say, 6 or more successful attacks, because ideally we've been able to implement some of these AI solutions in our tools, but also, as I said, some vendors have implemented some of these AI solutions in their tools. So one could say, of course, it's the point at which we're discussing it now, it's anecdotal because no one has actually done empirical research to prove that. But it's a discussion that is being fronted. But of course, it's something that is open to discussion, something that can be disputed, especially in the absence of data to really prove it. Because this more or less speaks in terms of the general perspective. A 2019 study by Gartner predicted that by 2023, the year in which we are now, 40% of privacy compliance tech will use AI. So that's how AI is impacting, again, from a technology perspective and from a privacy compliance perspective. And more importantly, the global spending on AI is expected to reach really those high numbers, as you can see there. So here, this is the point now where we get to discuss how AI is supporting us, how we are involving ourselves, or bringing AI into the frame of security and trying to be able to achieve and get the best out of AI. Of course, AI has done a lot of things. Again, from the security perspective, from the good side, we are seeing improved ability to defend against attacks. One, in terms of to detect advanced threats, because again, as I said, some of these next generation of firewall, it's a next gen malware scanner, it's a next gen vulnerability scanner, or it's a next gen security appliance. Some of these have applied these aspects of artificial intelligence in how they do, now they carry out their work, and they've been able to provide improved ability in terms of detection of advanced threats, in terms of detection of what we call indicators of compromise. And what that does, it allows us to be able to see those events before, or to be able to see activities that point to a possible indicator of compromise in our environment. That's because of that, but also advanced detection of vulnerabilities. So we have really proper or easy identification of vulnerabilities by using AI scanners. So that's provided that. But again, we've spoken about aspects of generative AI. Yeah, generative AI again in security has allowed us to have, probably one could say, better investigation in terms of investigating a cyber threat, understanding a cyber threat, researching on cyber adversaries. You have this generative AI. You can ask, can talk about a specific hacking group, and you'll be able to receive some information on that. Allowed us to be able to remediate security incidents, especially for, let's say, an IT person or a security officer that does not have the necessary skill, can just type out something and not be able to get feedback on how to execute or how to perform a specific action. But of course, that information again needs to be taken with a pinch of salt, especially with the nature of nefarious GPT or nefarious chatbots, some of them that we have, which again we shall mention again earlier, sorry, in the next sessions. And of course, there's again, in terms of automating some repetitive tasks. If you look at security event monitoring, if you look at incident response, some of these things are really repetitive. I'm monitoring events. I'm trying to understand which things are working. I'm trying to understand which events point. I'm trying to correlate sources or actions from different sources. AI can help us to be able to map and say, there's an activity that was performed on the firewall, it's linked to an action that was performed on an end user machine, it's linked to an action that was performed on the database server somewhere. I'm able to link that and still create a whole picture. That one guides in investigation, but also that allows you to ensure that there's adequate security monitoring and be able to have incident response. And if you look at some of the solutions, if you look at probably something like CrowdStrike, if you look at some EDR, some endpoint detection tools that are being deployed, they have AI capabilities that are able to look at that and be able to respond to an incident before even it comes to a security team to respond to, and be able to arrest that and be able to send an alert that something has been fixed. Again, from the general perspective, of course, the aspect of jobs, new jobs in AI, AI security. So again, if you want to be a champion in that space, there's no better time than now for you to do that. Quite a number of vendors have, again, as I said, have employed this in their technologies. There's Calypso AI that have that. There's Chromium that also implement AI in their solution. The Skyfly, that is a privacy vault based on GPT. There's Hidden Layer that does machine learning detection and response, which is really EDR. So quite a number of people have implemented that in their solution. We're really trying to get the best out of that. Of course, everything has a good side, and there's always a bad side. And at the end of the day, we hope that a good side outweighs the bad side. But that doesn't negate the fact that we still have the ugly side, the bad side of it, in terms of what some of these things can do, or what some of this AI can do for us, which is necessarily not useful, one could say. The ugly side is quite a number of things. If you look at polymorphic malware, in this particular case, we're looking at, I don't know whether we've heard of something called Black Mamba. Black Mamba basically is, one could say, is it's an AI-powered or an AI-based polymorphic malware. And basically, how it works is there's you have an executable that's running on the machine. It's benign. That means you cannot know it. It is hidden. You can't know it. So you have an executable that runs on the machine. That executable is connecting to an open AI, generative AI platforms, connecting to an open AI. And what that executable does is you can ask probably the open AI to generate Python code, or to generate probably from a security perspective, generate Python code that can be used for, let's say, keylogging application. So the Open API or the Open AI will generate that code, and the machine will download that code, and then that code again will be brought back to the infected machine, and it will use that code to generate a keylogger in terms of an executable file, an exe. So that executable then runs on the victim machine, and it runs, it launches, and this Black Mamba then is going to be able to use AI to be able to detect when someone possibly puts in a username and someone puts in a password, and that information is sent back to the malicious user. So that's ideally really how Black Mamba works. So there's that polymorphic malware. The aspects pertaining to deepfake, whether it's a deepfake video, a deepfake audio. For example, some of us who speak on who speak a lot of presentations, who make presentations, from a deepfake audio perspective, is some an AI model or an AI tool can just take my voice and be able to build something that is similar, and just get text and be able to create and be able to say or speak the way that I speak. In that, if someone was called over the phone, that tool or that deepfake audio will be able to speak, and it will be as if I'm actually the one who said those words. So yet I'm actually not the one who said them. So there will be aspect in terms of deepfake phone call recording. You're speaking with someone, but that's actually is not them, and that can lead to quite a number of things in terms of extortion, in terms of fraud, in terms of social engineering, that as well. But of course, there's also what we call deepfake porn, in terms of revenge porn. That also it's one of the ugly sides of this, because someone can create a video. It's not necessarily you in that video, and then somehow your face is just there, and of course you can deny that from your own personal perspective, can deny that it's not you, but of course from the general perception of society, it's actually you, because that is your face that is depicted there, but then actually it's not real. So there's still aspects pertaining to deepfake video that can be used. Again, that's from a societal perspective. Supply chain attacks talk about SolarWinds, but of course, in this particular case, talking about attacks that exploit vulnerabilities in machine learning and in AI themselves, that can be able to impact quite a number of people. Again, we talk supply chain. If you look at how SolarWinds impacted quite a number of people, so that again would be something on the bad side that we need to look out for. In terms of poisoning the large language model, the training data, AI makes decisions or provides suggestions based on data. A huge volume of data is the training data set, but if you're able to poison that training data set, to allow you to be able to say, or for it to be able to make wrong decisions per se, or decisions that you're not supposed to make, again, that will mean you have harmed the model, because the specific attacks that are pointed at fighting this particular training data set, and trying to poison that to ensure that it really does not do what it's supposed to do. So that is it really from the ugly side. But of course, one aspect that we need to cover that is really that's not necessarily covered in this slide. Of course, from the bad side, of course, we've seen ChatGPT scams. All of us must have seen them. We've seen, of course, AI can help criminals, one, to discover new evasion techniques, to discover new vulnerabilities, discover new attacks. We've talked of Mamba. Black Mamba can use AI to uncover credentials in output files. Of course, again, there's an increased potential from the slide that we looked at earlier, potential on privacy violation that needs to be covered. But also, although AI can allow probably non-skilled security people to actually perform security actions, we could find ourselves in a situation where we have a workforce that's less skilled, because anything I want, I'll ask generative AI model to be able to give me what I want to do. So I'm not necessarily skilled, but I'm using a model that's giving me what I want, what I need to do. Of course, again, that aside, we talked about aspects of some nefarious chatbots. Nefarious meaning because chatbots are being, some of the chatbots that are being built now, again, if you look at the new version of GPT, was that right now, if you ask ChatGPT now, the current version of ChatGPT, to write for you a code, let's say Python code to attack, it will not write that, because that was one of the concerns that were there earlier, because you could ask it anything and it will give you an answer to anything. But right now, if you look at, if you try to ask something that it will read as malicious, it will not be able to do it for you. I was trying to this week I was not trying to get numbers, mobile numbers that are similar to my telephone number, just to try to see whether all the possible variations to my number, my mobile number. But when I asked being AI, it told me that this information can be used for what you call a neighbor spoofing attack. So I cannot give you this information, which was really interesting. Ideally, I not wanted it for, I don't want that information for a bad reason, but he just could not give me that because I could have used the data for something else. So that is there, but also there are some other chatbots that are not necessarily that. There's Worm GPT, there's Fraud GPT, there's Darkbat. Even from their names themselves, you can clearly see that they're really meant for malicious content. And for Worm GPT, I think it's about 60 euros per month, but you find people actually pay that. Fraud GPT is about 200 euros per month. People actually pay that because it's able to develop really custom malware. It's able to develop phishing tools, because some of these AI tools can actually generate. For example, if you ask ChatGPT to generate for you an email, and generate for you a thorough email, even if you didn't know English, to generate in English. And the challenge that we've been having, or the ease that we've been having with tracking some of these malicious emails, we believe that the people that attempt these attacks don't know English. So you find there's some broken English, some of those phishing emails. But if an attacker really uses a large language model to generate that email, the email can be as perfect as it gets. So that's really how then that ties into the general picture in terms of the ugly side. So look at the good side, we looked at the bad side, we looked at the ugly side as well. But of course, now I come into the aspect of the fearing of the unknown, in terms of how that in itself is working out. We have this entire discussion in terms of this thing is going to phase out mankind. This thing is going to do this, but this thing may lead to the diminishing of human life. So quite a number of things in terms of the fear of the unknown. But of course, even again, from a societal perspective, there are a lot of advantages that ChatGPT can, or not necessarily, but any AI can bring to society. We've seen AI being used again in curing of disease, AI being used in the developing of new drugs. We've seen AI being used in diagnosing health conditions. We've seen AI being used in combating of human trafficking. We've seen AI in terms of performing some dangerous or tedious tasks. There are some tasks that really we feel humans are not safe to perform them, and those ideas can be performed. We've seen aspects of sexual harassment in terms of detection of that sexual harassment through emails and through chats. We've looked at the jobs. We've looked at those. But one important thing from a society perspective again is we've seen an incident where AI has attempted to bring closure with deceased loved ones. I was reading about a lady in Korea, a mother who lost a 7-year-old kid to a disease.
Hello. We seem to have lost Rodney in the middle of the presentation. Kindly bear with us as he gets back online. Rodney, are you there? Hello, can you hear me? Someone unmute and confirm you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Barbara.
Okay.
We seem to have lost Hood. Probably he's trying to connect. Let me try to reach out to him and confirm.
Thank you.
All right. Sorry about that. I'll request that you get back my audio and presentations. Right. My machine by default will, in terms of attempting to let me rest, will usually close and shut down at 19:55. So that's actually what happened.
That is interesting to know. We shall adopt some of those hacks, Rodney. The technical team is getting this sorted out. Kindly bear with us.
Yeah, because I'm surprised. It usually reminds me about 5 minutes prior. I think when I was sharing the screen, I didn't see that. So, and just by default took me out, telling me I need to rest. All right. As that comes up, I think by the time I left, I was speaking about this Korean mother who lost a 7-year-old daughter to an incurable disease. The mother, of course, didn't get a chance to say goodbye. So the mother was suffering from depression. The mother was obsessed over the loss of her daughter. Of course, we saw eventually there was in 2020 there was a Korean documentary, and if you want to watch it, it's called Meeting You, using an AI-based virtual reality version. They were able to bring sort of closure to the mother because they were able to generate, one could say, not necessarily the daughter herself, they were able to generate a virtual reality version of the daughter, and the mother was actually able to interact with the daughter, to be able to share some time with her. And for some, and she was able to gain closure because the daughter died and she didn't get to say bye, but she was able to have that sort of feel or that sort of closure with her daughter, just because there was some virtual reality aspects that allowed her to do that. So again, from a society perspective, that still covers it, and that also allows for some of the positive impact of AI at society. Of course, the bad other things from a societal perspective, again, bad or things that could happen. We've seen accidents in terms of bots, whether it is an automated car. We've seen some accidents in the Tesla cars. We've seen some robots that have actually killed humans. There was one robot that just spun and killed someone at, I think that was at Volkswagen. We've seen some robots that have really affected humans. We've seen aspects of election interference. We've seen some aspects of hacking. So again, from a general societal perspective, that is it. So that eventually ties into the aspect of what we're calling the fear of the unknown. The Future of Life Institute requests that AI development is halted, so they don't have anything more powerful than GPT-4, a minimum of 6 months, to allow for development of safety protocols that will allow AI to be accurate, to be safer, and to be trustworthy. And it is interesting because quite a number of people actually signed this, and some of these people are really leaders that we see in this space. Elon Musk being one of them, Steve Wozniak being one of them, and I think about 32,000 other people that signed this petition, because they're saying AI, government needs to step in to issue regulations for AI. Government needs to step in to control this because this thing is getting out of hand. So there's really still that fear. Again, Center for AI Security, more or less the same as the Future of Life Institute, because probably they're saying, because the primary thing is that we need to mitigate the risk of extinction from AI, and according to their statement, that should be a global priority alongside other risks like pandemics and nuclear war. So if we're grouping AI and nuclear war in the same aspect, then it's quite interesting. And of course, quite a number of huge scientists have signed that, again, for the Center of AI Security, including the CEO of OpenAI himself, Steve Altman, has been able to sign that. So signed by CEOs of AI labs, signed by lawmakers, signed by legal scholars, and quite a number of other people in terms of that. So there's still that fear of the unknown. So again, we're beginning to see more interaction again in terms of government, not necessarily interference or government work. From a policy perspective, there was a blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights at the White House. It was published in October of last year. It has a series of suggestions in terms of how to protect this, making automated systems work for the American people. And again, one could say the Biden administration has done quite a lot in that perspective in terms of trying to manage cyber overall. They issued out some guidelines in terms of cyber insurance. They've issued out guidelines, I think, in the past 2 months in terms of how cyber incidents should be reported and when they should be reported. So they've done quite a lot of things. So in this blueprint for AI Bill of Rights, of course, the 5 principles, I think the first is a safe and effective system. The AI system should be safe and effective. There should be algorithmic discrimination should be avoided in those systems. There should be data privacy. There should be notice and explanations. Then there should be human alternatives or consideration and fallback. Of course, that is what is in that bill. Quite a lot of things that they set forth in terms of that. There's also a NIST AI risk management framework. That's NIST AI 100-1 that was released. The first one was released in January of this year. It demonstrates 6 factors for mitigating risk and evaluating the trustworthiness of an AI system. Talks about validity and reliability. Talks about safety. Talks about security and resilience of the AI. It talks about accountability and transparency. Talks about privacy. Talks about fairness with harmful bias managed. Talks about explainability and interpretability. Of course, if you look at some of this, actually, some of ChatGPT again by default is actually disallowed in some of the countries. I think there should be generally about 15 countries. Of course, one of Russia being one of them, China being the other, North Korea, there's Myanmar, there's Belarus. So there are quite a number of countries where some of these technologies have been, even in Africa, I think in Chad, ChatGPT is actually not prohibited in Chad, in the Central African Republic as well. So in Italy, of course, it was stopped in Italy, I think, for a period of about 6 months. And for them, the perspective from Italy was, one, anyone that is less than 13 should not be able to use that. But also, you need to give the user an opportunity to, from a data protection perspective, to opt out of the data being processed in that model. But I think they eventually were able to fix that and close out on that chapter. So then there's that framework that we've been talking about, the NIST. But of course, now the largest of all is the European Union AI Act that was passed on 16th of June of this year, quite recent. It was really approved by an overwhelming majority. It's now being considered by the European Council, but it assigns different risk levels to certain AI practices. There's an AI practice that will be minimal risk, there are those that are limited risk, there are those that are high risk, and there are those that are unacceptable risk. So if the thing is, if it's considered as minimal risk, there's no obligation. If it's limited risk, there's the aspects of the AI solution has to be transparent. If it is high risk, there has to be they call it a conformity assessment. And then there's what is now prohibited. Prohibited is aspects pertaining to those that are unacceptable risk, aspects pertaining to social scoring, mass surveillance, manipulation of behavior, causing harm. So from the general perspective, really, again, we see some government regulation in that space and government stepping in, try to regulate AI. But of course, over and above it, we pray and we hope that AI has given us good things, that's given us the bad things. But all we need to do is we need to be able to use this AI responsibly. And some of the aspects in terms of how to secure that are embedded in these probably frameworks, these regulations that have come out by these countries, and they allow us to be able to use or to be able to understand and be able to secure our AI better and be able to get the positive out of it, be able to avoid the bad, and be able to have what we call the net impact has to be positive as what we're having with the internet now, with all the risks that come with it. Because the net impact, as long as that's positive, then we can say from a societal perspective that is something that would be appreciative or something that we want to manage. So basically on that, I want to stop there. I believe I hope I've been able to share some useful information, and I hope again we've been able to make it as simple as possible for everyone to understand and try to see what we're trying to achieve with AI and what we're trying to gain out of AI. Otherwise, thank you. So I want to pass it back over to you in case there are any questions for me to take. Thank you for the pleasure of your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rodney. It was such an engaging and interesting discussion. I don't know about the rest, but I heard about black mambas, data poisoning, deepfakes, supply chain attacks, and election interference, but it was not all bad. He said that we are going to have other enhancements in data analysis. We might get new jobs and opportunities. Brace yourselves. We are looking at changes in the global setting because of AI, improved cybersecurity hacks. Regulators are picking up the pace. We are talking about human diagnostics, where we are going to be able to get better and improved health management. And I think I also was interested in the NIST artificial intelligence risk management framework that is coming up to help us with the AI. So that was what I picked. I know you have also picked very many interesting aspects of the discussion. Thank you so much, Rodney. And now we shall move to the questions. We shall thank the people who have taken time to share their observations and questions that they would like our speaker to address. And in the order in which they got in, we shall start with Brian Jita. Brian Jita wanted to know, how do organizations strike a balance between security measures and the performance of AI systems? That was the first question, excuse me. I think I'll read the 4 questions so that I give you time to address them. The second question, still from Brian Jita, is will AI itself be useful in enhancing cybersecurity at the same time defend against AI-driven attacks? Will AI itself be useful in enhancing cybersecurity and at the same time defend against AI-driven attacks? Brian has been listening. I don't know which side he wants to be, whether he wants to do the AI-driven attacks or to enhance the cybersecurity. We'll also read the third question. In the case of information security investigations and forensics, how does one prepare to bridge the gap between the traditional attacks and the complexity introduced by the AI models? That was an anonymous attendee. We shall call her Jessie. Jessie needed to know how one prepares to bridge the gap between the traditional attacks and the complexity introduced by the AI models. And the final question, okay, the second last, there are a lot of questions regarding the ethical considerations for AI models with respect to user privacy. Do you think this will be a challenge in implementing AI security measures as well? This is also another anonymous attendee who wants to know. The question is, there are a lot of questions regarding the ethical considerations of AI models with respect to user privacy, and whether you think this will be a challenge in implementing AI models, AI security measures as well. The last question so far is from Deogracius Okello. Deogracius wants to know, is cybersecurity insurance in the pipeline in this country? In the country, I hope he's referring to the country in which the webinar is being hosted. So we shall assume that we are asking whether we have cybersecurity insurance in the pipeline in Uganda, whether they are preparing. So thank you so much for the questions. Over to you, Rodney. Kindly take over.
Okay, thank you so much. Quite a number of interesting questions, and one of One thing I failed to say at the beginning of this session, and one of the things I learned when I would go to make presentations, that I would always make a disclaimer that I'm not the brightest at some of these things. So don't ask hard questions. But I'll attempt to address them. I've taken note of the questions. Brian, it's been long since we last met, but I'm happy that education and learning brings us together. So let me take the question. I think the first question was in terms of how to balance the security measures, if I read that well, and the performance of AI. Because ideally, again, that's an interesting question, and I think it's an important question because one, we need to strike a balance between the security of AI, but also need to strike a balance between with the performance of AI. Some of the things that we can use during that, of course, one of them is from aspects of data of LLM data poisoning. We need to ensure that we use secure training data, which is training data. Of course, all systems are trained on data, and if the data is not secure, and then the AI system will be vulnerable to attacks. So we need to ensure that the data that we use in the training is actually correct, and that the data that we use for this training data set is protected and is secure. Second consideration would be aspects of using secure algorithms, because there are quite a number of algorithms that can use to train and be able to deploy AI systems. So we need to ensure again that for us to get the best value out of that we're using a secure algorithm to train and to deploy our AI system, because they're designed by default to be how would you call it, to be resistant to adversaries, to be resistant to attacks, and to protect again the privacy of the data. So we're trying to strike a balance between the security and the privacy. So we need to secure the AI. A third is in terms of how to use secure infrastructure. Ideally, we should deploy our AI model on infrastructure that is protected from attacks. That will be again aspects from general security perspective, aspect pertaining to firewalls, aspect pertaining to IDSs, aspect pertaining to endpoint detection systems, and other security mechanisms. So we just need to ensure that the infrastructure on which the AI is deployed is in itself secure. Aspects again, monitoring. In terms of monitoring of AI systems, systems should be monitored for signs of attack. You can use anomaly detection tools, or you can use other security measures, just to ensure that there's actual aspects of monitoring there. Then finally, what I would want to say is that there is still need for human. There's still need for the human. Of course, there's still need for human insight. So systems should not be used without human oversight. There are things that, of course, a machine can do to things to a certain extent, but there's quite significant computational power, if I may say, that that omnipotent put in these heads of ours, that it may be very hard for a machine to be able to depict or to be able to completely cover some of that intellect that was put in the human head. So the aspect of the human aspect still needs to be considered. That there needs to be aspects of monitoring, but some of the other things could be again the type of the AI that is being used. Some AIs, again, as I said, are more secure than the others. Those should be catered for. For example, I think if you look at deep learning systems, are more vulnerable to attacks than rule-based systems. So there's that. And also important, what the sensitivity of the data that is being processed. The more sensitive the data, the more important it is for it to take security precaution. Then aspects of the budget and resources available. Because security will do a cost-benefit analysis, so security can add aspects to cost and complexity of the AI system. And then finally, from a risk management perspective, how we can manage the safety and the performance is in terms of the risk tolerance of the organization. Ideally, if you're risk averse, then you need to play cool on some. On the other side, if someone who wants to trade some, if you're risk averse, you can trade some performance for security. So if you're not, you may be able to trade and say, okay, we can have some security and have some performance, but if you're risk averse, you can say, no, let's have security and let's minimize performance. So there's that. So we just need to balance that. And I hope I have answered part and a bit of that question. In terms of whether AI can be able to detect and support, and I hope I got that right, AI to be able to detect and support AI-driven attacks. Yes, AI can be used to stop AI-driven attacks, I would say. Of course, there are some ways that can be used, quite a number. Of course, some of them are things that will be known. Of course, one would be anomaly detection. AI itself can detect unusual patterns in network traffic, because if an attack is caused by AI, it's not going to be probably sort of any different from a normal. That's because this time it's initiated by a machine. Probably it is more complicated, but again, AI can be used to identify unusual patterns in network traffic, or unexpected system behavior or user behavior that may indicate an attack. That's one, but also we can do aspects of malware analysis. AI can be used to identify, it can be used to classify malware more quickly and more accurately than human analysts. So again, that's another way that AI itself can actually be able to detect AI-based attacks. More importantly, sharing threat intelligence, AI being able to collect data and analyze threat data from a variety of sources to be able to minimize damage, such that by the time you have a comprehensive view of the threat landscape, you know what is happening in related markets or in a related sector, and AI can help you do that threat intelligence, and that allows you to be able to protect against the attack before it comes. But also now when you attack, the aspects of incident response, AI can, again, as I said, AI can actually in itself automate a response in terms of take action against a particular attack, whether it is AI generated or human generated. We have aspects in terms of incident response capabilities in AI that can be able to stop attacks. We have can use aspects of what called deceptive technology, what you call probably honeypots, honeybots. AI can be used to lure attackers into a trap, to a honeypot, into a honey net, and that can be able to ask to help them to, one could say, to learn patterns, learn user patterns, to learn how learn the user pattern. That is one, but also to learn how attackers are planning to carry out the activity and be able to stop against those particular sections or those particular attacks. Then finally, of course, we look at aspects of what we call SOA platforms. That is security orchestration, automation, and response. Those are things. We have AI-powered SOA platforms that can automate tasks that ideally would be done by the human. Aspects pertaining to threat hunting, aspects pertaining to incident response, and aspects pertaining to compliance reporting. Some of these things can be performed by this. But of course, what we need to keep in at the back of our mind is that AI is not a silver bullet per se. And AI-driven attacks are becoming increasingly sophisticated, and it is now possible for attackers to develop, again, AI systems that can evade, again, AI-based defenses. So it's interesting. So that's why we still need the aspect of that human expertise, and why I still say that there's something that the Lord put in this brain that may not necessarily be fully depicted by a machine. So that is also something that we need to address. Then in terms of there was a question on investigation, which was in terms of complexity. Again, okay, complexity brought about by, let's say, AI-driven attacks. Of course, yes, there's that. There will be some aspect of complexity, as we've said, because the AI-based attacks. So ideally, someone who's doing investigation, things are going to have to change, because the way you will do investigation now will probably be different from the way you will do it if it's an AI-based attack, because one, it will be more sophisticated. There'll be a lot of evidence to look at. There'll be a lot of information that you need to look at. So for those, ideally, it's best that during that process that we now move to AI detection, AI investigation. We spoke about issues around security, events monitoring. So ideally, the aspect is that those things pertaining to security, events monitoring, and logging, and some of those are actually done by AI, in that you don't have to have the human do some of those and those things are actually notified. And the best way really for me, what I would say is to help that would be that we need to advance more and move more to the direction where we have AI-based detection and response to be able to effectively respond and be able to address aspects pertaining to investigation. So we just need to keep ourselves updated and abreast of these things. Then there's a question on, if I noted this well, AI ethics. I think ethical considerations. Of course, there are several ethical considerations of AI models in privacy. There are quite a number of aspects in terms of the privacy of the data itself, in terms of the data. Some of the data may be the training data. When I say data, I mean the training data. So the training data may not be properly anonymized or may not be properly de-identified, so it can still identify individuals and share some of their sensitive information. There may be concerns, ethical concerns pertaining from the transparency, but ideally the AI model is expected to be transparent about how they make their decision, and be clear and not have any specific biases. So that you should be able to disclose the data that the model is trained on, the algorithms, and the potential risks to privacy. Those are some of the ethical considerations. Again, the aspect pertaining to accountability, because those who develop the AI should be accountable. Those who develop the AI and the model should be accountable for their actions. There's the aspects of fairness. The decisions made by AI solutions should be fair and unbiased. We've seen court decisions against unfair or discrimination of people by AI. Then some we have a case law where they've been demonstrated court cases that have been won in that perspective, and then there'll be the aspect of human oversight. But there are things that can be done. There are quite a number of things that can be done to address those ethical considerations I've said. Aspects of data privacy, just make sure that data should be properly anonymized, data should be properly de-identified. That is one aspect of transparency. You have to be transparent about how the model operates, how it makes its decision, disclose what data was used for its training, aspects of accountability. You develop the model, you develop the AI model, you're responsible for it and its actions. So you have to take relevant steps to protect the privacy and be liable for any harm. Aspects of fairness, the model should be fair and unbiased. I mean, it should not discriminate against individuals based on specific biases. Then again, aspects of human oversight. AI models cannot operate without human oversight, so that needs to be there. But of course, one additional thing I can add in terms of being able to match that would be aspects of what we call PETs, which are privacy enhancing technologies. So a number of privacy enhancing technologies that can be used to protect data when training and using AI models, and they can help you to anonymize the data, to de-identify it, and to be able to encrypt the data, but also aspects of homomorphic encryption that allow you to process or make decisions on data that is encrypted without actually disclosing the data. So those are also aspects that are there. Then responsible AI practices. Those are some of the things that we've been talking about. And then finally, we've also talked about aspects of regulation that are important. So we need to have more involvement of government in terms of developing regulations in that space. Then the final question was around the cyber insurance in the pipeline of the country. Cyber insurance is a particular topic of discussion for me, and it's an interesting topic for me. For Uganda, I think yes, there's a bit of people that are providing the solution here. The market is not as developed as the market back in the UK. The UK market, the UK cybersecurity market is huge. It's quite big. I think the UK, the US, and Australia really have those developed cyber insurance markets. But for Uganda, I've seen quite a number of people that are offering it. I know there's a broker that's offering it, but AIG, Aon was offering at some point. I've seen Sanlam is currently offering a solution as well. But of course, we need to be careful in terms of what sort of policy that we want from a cyber insurance perspective. What coverage is there? What is it covering? What are the exclusions? What is the deductible? So we need to be again careful in those considerations. But it's something that is there that I've seen, and I've seen quite a number of people, of players, especially in the financial markets, financial services market that are trying to embrace it and trying to have a discussion around. But it's interesting because it allows you to be able to get to be protected against certain aspects of risk of incident, because we say it's not an issue of whether you'll be attacked, it's a factor of when. So we need to focus more on response and how we're able to get business operations back up and early and make use of that opportunities or make use of the expertise brought about by cyber insurance firms. Thank you. I think I've addressed those are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that I noted. I think I've addressed all of them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rodney. We still have more questions coming in. The topic was quite interesting and you've done it justice. For now, I'm going to remember the human aspect and I give you a question at a time. The next question comes from Komgabe Agri. She says, given that organizations have been implementing the traditional security measures, how ready should the organization be to eliminate the AI attacks? And what measures do they need to put up to mitigate any likelihood of attack? I'll repeat the question.
No, it's fine. I've gotten it. So
Okay.
let me just proceed in the interest of time. One, I want to believe that a large part of that question has been answered in the very first question that Brian asked. I think the second question, in terms of how we mitigate AI-driven attacks, I think we've more or less discussed that and provided feedback in that area and mentioned some of the things that organizations are supposed to do. But of course, we've agreed that traditional security is not ready to respond to AI-based attacks, and we just need to get ourselves there. Of course, it's a journey. There are budgetary constraints to that. We cannot implement everything at once, but there are things that we can still do. As we had said, some of them are the normal things that we've been doing, just because the attacks are more advanced, and also we need to have now probably one could say more advanced tools, both from an anomaly detection perspective, from a malware analysis perspective, from a threat intelligence perspective, from an incident response perspective. We've talked about security orchestration. We've talked about deception technologies, but also probably to add on to that, we need to again get ourselves more to aspects of data availability in terms of trying to ensure that our data is available. That is one, but that also our servers and our systems are available to serve the customers as and when they need to be served. So we need to have aspects in terms of redundancies to ensure that we have that. But by and large, the traditional security would aspect of traditional security would work in protection against the normal attacks, but also now that traditional security then just has to be enhanced a little further to be able to support this. And of course, I spoke about the next generation firewalls. We've spoken about some security solutions that already have AI embedded in them. So we need to invest more in those security solutions that have AI embedded in them to ensure that they're able to detect against those sorts of attacks. So I think that responds to that question.
Okay, thank you very much. We still have 3 more questions.
Okay.
The participants were quite engaged. Sharon Kisinde thanks you very much for an engaging presentation. And she asks, cybersecurity and AI, how is Uganda and Africa doing in terms of regulations? Do we have any in the pipeline?
That is how Africa is doing in terms of
regulations, and whether we have any.
Okay. For Uganda perspective, Uganda has a working group on AI. I think it's more or less, one could say, on generally fourth industrial revolution technologies that is trying to harmonize that in from a larger perspective, but there's not yet. I think it was just still at an engagement, a stakeholder engagement perspective, as far as I remember, because there was an engagement with UNDP around that. But there's nothing really solid in terms of regulation in that space. For Africa, of course, we have leaders in that space. There are quite a number of countries that have developed some regulation. One of them is South Africa. South Africa has the National Artificial Intelligence Strategy that more or less sets out a framework for responsible development of development and use of AI in South Africa. It has provisions for provision of privacy. So it has provisions for protection of privacy, non-discrimination, and also aspects of human oversight. Our neighbors right next door, Kenya, have established, I think, a national artificial intelligence task force, not necessarily a framework, and they're trying to develop a national policy on AI. The task force is also working on ethical considerations for the use of AI in Kenya. That's also there. Nigeria, not necessarily, because Nigeria, from the recent passed their Data Protection and Privacy Act, but that does not necessarily speak into aspects of AI. But another country that's probably working in that space is Ghana. Ghana is developing its national AI strategy that again will address ethical and legal implications of AI. And that strategy is expected to be completed this year, I want to believe. So there's South Africa, there's Kenya. South Africa that has the strategy, that has a framework. Kenya that has a task force that is developing the national policy, and Ghana that's developing a national AI strategy. But of course, there are some challenges that we generally face as African countries in terms of regulation, lack of resources. We cannot develop and enforce those AI regulations. We have some of the privacy regulations, we cannot even enforce them, because, for example, we cannot enforce some of the privacy enhancing technologies themselves. So the same applies to AI. There's a general lack of expertise in Africa in that space as well. So it makes it difficult for us to develop and enforce effective regulation. So quite a number of, but also many African countries don't have data protection laws yet. So it makes it difficult for you to manage privacy of individuals when using AI. And there's also now the aspect of us as a people, aspect of culture and tradition. So some cultures and traditions may really conflict the use of AI, and that makes it difficult for us to develop regulations that are acceptable to everyone. Some sentiments that, again, as African countries, as we, the African community, carry, especially about the rainbow people. Again, those are still aspects of culture and tradition, but the same applies to AI. There's some culture and traditional things about our society that may affect the use of AI. So yeah, that is it. So there are some of the countries that, but there's some momentum, and some countries are continuing to develop. But as technology advances, we shall do that. But of course, we are usually people of tech goes first. We come back with the regulation later. But yeah, so there's some trailblazers that are trying to do something around it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. We have two more questions. The next one is from Philip. Philip Bizimana is asking, for organizations whose network monitoring tools lack AI functionality, don't you think hackers may exploit this, given that fraudsters are always trying something new all the time?
Organizations that lack
AI monitoring tools in their networking.
Yeah. So the idea is, can hackers exploit networking tools that do not have AI technology? But of course, the default thing is that without those capabilities, then the organization in itself is not going to be able to detect some of those attacks, because they will come and they will pass. So there are quite a number of ways that can happen. There will be social engineering. Hackers can use that to gain access to system. There can be aspects pertaining to malware. There can be zero-day attacks. Can be phishing. Can be random. Can also be aspects pertaining to ransomware. So yes, so it's true that those can be exploited by malicious attackers to obtain access to systems that they're not supposed to have access to. And that's why, again, it is paramount that in whatever that we do, we try to evolve with technology and be able to implement some of those things that are value adding, or some of those things that are in line with technology. For example, again, as we said, next generation firewall or AI-enabled security tools for incident response, for endpoint detection and response, for vulnerability assessment, just to ensure that we do have some level of protection against against attacks at that particular level. So yes, those can be severely impacted, but we need to, again, we have budgetary constraints to that, but it's a journey of several days that we need to take a step at a time. But yes, those can be exploited. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodney. Now to the last question from Ajiri Komgabe. She would like to hear your perspective on AI security tools for websites. AI security tools for websites.
AI security tools for websites.
Yes.
Okay. So what you're saying is we're looking for AI tools that can be used to protect websites, right? That's the question. And for that particular question, let me see. I don't have all that information, but I want to demonstrate something that we can use. So let me see. I'm trying to get my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
So this is Google Bard, and I'm telling Google Bard what AI security tools for websites are available. So it is loading. I don't have the answer to that question. So I'm trying to get you the answer. So I've asked Google Bard what AI security tools for websites are available, and tells me here are some of the AI security tools for websites: CrowdStrike, Falcon Prevent, Darktrace, Antigena, Vectra, Alcognito, IBM, QRadar, Fortinet, FortiWeb, Trend Micro, Deep Discovery Inspector, Sophos Web Protection. So this is what AI can do for us. And even if I don't have a response to your question, I could as well just go in there and type, and I will give you these answers, and I will look an expert that I am not. So those are your answers, and I want to believe that that answers your question. Is that right?
Thank you very much. It does answer the question. Thank you so much, Rodney. Thank you for a wonderful, engaging presentation. Thank you for attending to all the questions and doing justice to them. We appreciate all the preparation to enrich us also. We feel like we also did some reading and have something to take away. So we are very grateful for all this. I wish I could ask an AI tool what is coming next, because the chapter administration is going to tell us about the ISACA conference soon. So I'm going to ask them in a few. But as I ask them, we'll request you to share with us your parting shots, your last remarks as we hand over to June. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, and always interesting to have this discussion. And AI, the two topics that I speak about that I really usually receive a lot of interaction. One of them is this particular one in terms of AI. The second, and usually when I speak about cyber insurance, whether it is home and whether it is in the UK, those are really things that attract a lot of attention. And it is interesting, and it's good that we have some of those questions coming through. Otherwise, I thank you so much for this time, and some of the questions have been largely helpful, and of course, they've also allowed me to obtain understanding of some of these things, because we don't always know everything. So at times when you're reading up on these things and preparing, you find a lot of material that is really interesting that you want to share. So I may have probably not shared everything that I was supposed to share, but I've been able to share what I need to share. But it's been an interesting sharing session. I hope and I pray that we've learned something about it. But just to say, AI is with us. It's going to affect us from a cyber perspective, from a society perspective. We just need to be ready for it. We just need to embrace it and need to ensure that the net impact of what it does is good for us, and it's something that really works. On your question of the ISACA conference, I've asked Google Bad when is the ISACA Kampala Chapter Conference 2023, and it tells me this conference will be held between 27 and 29th September. I don't know whether it is correct. In Kampala, the theme is Digital Trust, Embracing Change and Empowering Leadership. Keynote will be Dr. Timothy Simei. I didn't know this information, but I don't know whether it is public. I don't know where it picked this keynote speaker from, and I hope it's actually correct on this particular keynote speaker. I don't think it is, but yeah, but we can hear from that. Otherwise, thank you so much. I asked that, and it gave me that response, and I asked Google Bard before I was presenting this to write me a short story on the impact of AI in the cyber industry, and the opening sentence was really interesting. The year is 2025, and this is writing the futuristic nature. AI has become a major force in the cybersecurity industry. AI-powered security systems are now used by businesses of all sizes to detect and respond to threats in real time. And its parting shot was the use of AI in security is still evolving, but it has the potential to make a significant impact on the industry. By automating tasks and providing new insights, AI can help businesses to stay ahead of the ever evolving threat landscape and provide their data and systems, prevent them from cyber attacks. So that's what it wrote for me, which was quite interesting. And also part of this presentation, as you can see, I asked to have a detailed Go slides presentation on the impact of AI and cybersecurity, and it sort of listed for me how the presentation should flow from slide 1 to other slides. So some of the things I've said are not necessarily out of my own wisdom, but these things I've supported. I thank you, and I thank everyone for the pleasure of their time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for walking the talk with us. We have learned a lot. We can even now apply. Thank you, participants. I'm handing over to the ISACA chapter administration. Thank you once again. Over to you, John.
Okay, thank you very much. Our presenter, Rodney Hood Adrico, for dissecting the topic eloquently. I've just gotten surprised that chatbots started in the early 1960s. So, learning never stops. Thank you very much, Rodney Hood Adrico. Thank you very much, our moderator. This is Barbara Wabile. Thank you very much for moving the session. In the interest of time, we're already past time. Let me go straight to the announcements. So our next webinar will be on the 14th September 2023, and the topic will be combined assurance and effective approach to value addition. And our guest speaker will be Miss Ruth Doreen Mukeve. She will be facilitating that session. Please book your seats as early as possible. We are starting the communications tomorrow. Please mark your calendars for the 12th Annual East African Information Security Conference that will be held from 27th to 29th at Speak Resort Munyonyo. Please sign up using the session link and follow up for more information on our social media platforms. The other one is register and become a member. Become a 2024 member today and get the rest of 2023 free. Use that website for registering as a member of ISACA. Then 4, embrace the spirit of giving at ISACA Kampala chapter Community Day on 7th October 2023. Join us in uplifting our community through volunteering and contributions. Your support, big or small, can transform lives. To contribute, simply send your donations to the numbers that to the MTN merchant code that, and then through Stanbic Bank account title, Isaka Kampala chapter. The bank account is there given. Just in case of more information, please, you can reach out to our secretariat and they can give you more information in regard to the giving. Thank you very much. Please, a reminder, there is a survey at the end of this webinar. Please spare a minute to go through it so that you can help us improve this webinar experience. Let me hand over to our secretary, Miss Rita Kobsinje. Please take over from there. Thank you.
Good evening.
Rita, you're breaking.
Can you hear me?
Connection is not. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. In the interest of time, my work is simple, just to recognize the presence of our volunteers. We have Mr. Joseph Lubega on call, who is the membership director. Thank you very much for joining us. We have our moderator, that is Ms. Barbara Wabwire, who is the Shielded Tech committee member and an event and education committee member. Thank you for joining us and for volunteering to be our moderator tonight. We have Mr. Kefa Tusubira, who is the suspensions director and as well as an event and education committee member. We have Mr. Eric Sechizivu, our treasurer. We have Mr. John Chikubye, our very own, our CPD coordinator and a member of the event and education committee. We have Mr. Jime Chisomba, who is the finance committee member. Ms. Sharon Chisinde, the event committee and education committee member, as well as the Shielded Tech member. We have Ms. Diana Tukundane, Shielded Tech committee member. We have Mr. Bernard Arinaiche, who is the communications and marketing committee member. We have Mr. Lloyd Pentongo, who is the event and education committee member. We also want to recognize the presence of the South Africa chapter, Isaka chapter, present, Mr. Kenneth Paliam. Thank you for joining us this evening. We also want to recognize the presence of Mr. Ndamagi Augustus from Isaka Rwanda chapter. Thank you very much for joining us. I would like to take this opportunity. Before that, I also want to recognize and appreciate the work done by our administrators, Brenda and Sarah. Thank you very much, together with our volunteers. At this point, I want to hand over to our chapter president, none other than Mr. Bernard Wanyama, to give us the closing remarks. Thank you very much. Mr. Bernard, please take us away.
Thank you. Thank you, Rita. Good evening, everybody. My job is simple, to let you people go home. I want to express my gratitude to Rodney for sharing with us a detailed presentation of AI and making us aware of the things that we have to consider as we embark on the AI journey. I think from my perspective, the question of privacy, consent, and sovereignty, and then things like AI hallucinating, telling you lies, and the day when AI will eventually take over. I think those are top things from where I stand. But as a country, as a chapter, as Isaka, I think our duty is to enable our organizations and our society to get into AI from an advantageous point of view, to exploit the opportunity. We have a lot of talent in this country. We have a lot of good things happening, and I think we can reap a lot of benefits from AI as an industry that's emerging. And so I'm really excited for such a discussion. Allow me to end here. I will not recognize everybody that's come. I think we've had those people recognized by Rita, but to thank our presenter, the team behind the presenter, the education committee, and the moderator, plus everybody who managed to make it. I was happy to see some guests like President Paliam and Augustus, together with our senior members, Josephine and Mark, Omona, Emmanuel, Anita, plus others, as well as new members, Ronald Otiek and Raymond. I'm really happy that this kind of event brings together people from different perspectives and different levels of experience. I look forward to seeing you at the conference, 27th to 29th. We have an opportunity to get together in person and have fun, as well as doing something for a worthy cause on the first Saturday of October. It will be 7th when we do the community day. I want to stop here and say thank you so much for choosing to spend your time with us. Have a good evening. May God bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, President, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, members, and have a good evening.